little bit of tension in that third chord. There's a washing machine in there. Almost like you're kind of skipping. Hello, this is going to be a breakdown of my track, The Embrace. This was one of the rare occasions where I developed almost the entire structure of the song completely outside of the box, and I didn't even demo it. I don't think on my phone even, for quite a long time. So it lived in here for a very long time, and it was just me sitting at a piano or a synth, developing the song. Started with a chord progression, and the vocal top line came very quickly after that. And this was just a result of me sitting at a synth or piano and just playing around, and that was what came out quite intuitively. And I very quickly realised that there was some kind of tension building, so I kind of followed that thread. We've got the chords in the right hand changing, and a little bit of tension in that third chord because of that ninth in there, but most of the tension is building because the left hand is static and not going anywhere. We've just got, especially underneath that third chord where we've got essentially a kind of A flat type chord over the G, and you've got that kind of dissonance. So I really wanted to lean into that. And then when the chorus hit, I wanted a kind of release of that and a resolution. So the left hand is now following the chords, and the chords are slightly different, a little bit more perhaps pleasing to the ear, or less dissonant, a bit more stable. So there was a repetition of that, and then at the very end of the chorus we've got this rising. So I wanted to kind of continue that idea of hope. The meaning of the song, I think, came quite organically and quite quickly, and it ended up being this sort of celebration of the inner child and permission to just let go of everything and be a child. And it was that in general, but also a kind of a nostalgic thing for me in terms of my childhood and remembering my sister and I as children and our relationship. That element of letting go, but also love as well. So to continue that hopeful element, the next part of the chord progression that came was the middle eight, which was a development of that final part of the chorus, that ascending, only it keeps going. And leading into that section, actually, the first time we hear that additional chord, I really wanted to highlight that quite a lot. So I had embrace and embrace, the embrace. That chord leading into the middle eight, I really wanted to highlight that by bringing in more instruments to double it and kind of celebrate that. And the vocal that goes over that middle eight is quite bouncy and almost like you're kind of skipping, just to kind of carry on that feeling. And so on. So at this point, I feel like there was a lot of fluidity to the parts, and I really felt like I wanted to counter that with rhythmic elements, and that was my next trail of thought, was to look at beats. I basically built a couple of kits out of samples that I'd made over the years, or perhaps more recently than that, and created a sort of skeleton of a beat as a starting point. And so looking at the kits here, I've got them in the MPC Live here, which is where I first created them. It's quite a combination of sounds. Some of them are, so I created a kit out of an MS-20 monosynth, where I created kick, snare, hats and sort of tom sounds and turned that into a kit. So that's in there. Some samples I don't actually remember the origin of, but I've given them appropriate names to describe them, like this sort of breathy sounds. You might recognize that one if you know the song. They either came from my voice and then manipulated in various ways. Some of them are quite metallic sounding. So it might have been more metallic sounds and somehow I made them sound a little bit more voice-like. Who knows? This was a sound I used in a really old song of mine, actually, that TJ Allen and I created by throwing lots of things inside a grand piano. So we were having a little bit of a prepared piano fun time. My MS-20 Toms. There's a washing machine in there as well. Anyway, let's have a listen to what they ended up sounding like. MS-20 Toms. Something I really love to do is the idea of bringing electronic elements and organic or acoustic elements together and marrying them together so that you can't really tell what's what anymore and it's just all one in the same thing. I also brought in a drummer who's a good friend of mine called Alex Thomas, a brilliant drummer, and he did just exactly what the track needed. Brilliant. Again, because it's quite a slow and fluid song, I kind of really wanted to further accentuate those sort of 16th triplet pulses. So in addition to that, I added this piano sound, which was more of a percussive kind of role. Everything else that was brought in was basically just supplementing the original idea. The chords were played. I recorded the bass and the sort of left hand and right hand, recorded them as separate parts so that we could really get into the sounds that we wanted. The bass ended up being two different sounds, doubled, one of which was an Oberheim Sem and the other one was a monopoly. The main chords were recorded using my Prophet 6 and also we had access to a Prophet 5 as well, so there were some overdubs. And the other instrument that kind of helped to support all the chords was a piano. Unsurprisingly. That's right. So that chord I said about that comes out of the chorus going into the middle A that I wanted to highlight, the other reason I wanted to highlight it was that it was going against what the piano was doing. I'd totally forgotten that. So PS Splang, as I've called it here. Let's have a little lesson. And embrace the embrace. So that chord goes up, but the piano stays where it is. So it's sort of both hope and tension at the same time. The only other sort of element that I brought in other than synths, piano, all the percussive stuff and vocals was this DIY Mellotron choir that I made out of my voice. That was quite a useful way of bringing dynamics up and down, swelling, and just as a pad actually. And then at the end, one of the last things I tend to do when I'm arranging a song is to think about the sort of dynamic arc of the song and how do I want sections to go into one another, and is there opportunity to create kind of dynamic swells and things like that, which could either be pitched or could be done with a noise source or, whatever. And it doesn't have to just be synth, but this is something that I did a little bit in this song, but it doesn't seem like a lot. But this swell here, leading into the bridge. Get